Chelsea, with arms laden with bags brimming with groceries, pushed open the door to her cozy, sunlit home. The smell of fresh bread from the local bakery mingled with the scent of ripe oranges and crisp apples, creating an inviting aura. As she methodically unpacked and stored the food in the fridge, her eyes drifted towards the window overlooking the lawn. There, under the golden afternoon sun, was Mark, her boyfriend, engaged in a spirited game of tag with her two kids, Lily and Max. Their laughter rang through the air, filling Chelsea's heart with warmth. "Mommy, look." "I'm winning," Max's excited voice echoed as he raced past the window, his little sister hot on his heels. Mark, with a broad smile, playfully pretended to be outpaced by the kids, his eyes meeting Chelsea for a fleeting moment, sharing a silent message of love and contentment. This was the life she had always dreamed of, a simple yet fulfilling existence surrounded by love and joy. But unbeknownst to her, this blissful journey was about to be rocked to the core, challenging the very foundations of their dream. Mark and Chelsea's story began in the digital realm, a modern tale of connection forged in the vast network of the internet. Over a year ago, they found each other on a dating site. Two souls seeking companionship amidst the chaos of the online world. Their initial conversations were hesitant, filled with the uncertainty and excitement of new connections. They bonded over shared interests, finding common ground in their love for indie music, a penchant for hiking, and a mutual appreciation for classic literature. Their first date was at a quaint coffee shop tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The nervousness they felt was palpable, but as they talked, laughed, and shared stories, the initial awkwardness melted away, replaced by a comfortable ease they found in each other, an unexpected understanding, a sense of familiarity that belied the short time they had known each other. What resonated deeply with Chelsea about Mark was his unwavering acceptance and embrace of her life as a mother. In her past experiences with online dating, the revelation that she had two children from a previous marriage often marked the end of burgeoning relationships. Many men she encountered would lose interest or fade away after learning about her parental status, leaving her disheartened and skeptical about finding a partner who would accept her and her children. But Mark was different. When Chelsea cautiously broached the topic of her children, Lily and Max, during their initial conversations, she braced herself for the familiar pattern of retreat. However, Mark's reaction was anything but typical. Instead of pulling away, he expressed genuine interest in her life as a mother. He asked about her children, not as an obligation but out of a sincere desire to know more about her world and the little ones who were a huge part of it. Chelsea was 45 years old, while Mark had just turned 32. Their age difference was noticeable, but it didn't seem to matter to them. Chelsea's friends, seeing how happy she was, were cautious about sharing their thoughts on Mark. Some quietly believed he was too young to be with a 45-year-old woman, but only a few had the courage to voice this. Most of her friends held back, not wanting to upset Chelsea. They understood the delicacy of the situation. Their reluctance to speak up was not without reason. There was an incident at a barbecue with friends that stood out. Vanessa, in a half-joking tone, brought up Mark's age. "So, Chelsea, when you're 65, Mark's going to be just 52, right?" Vanessa commented with a slight chuckle. The comment drew everyone's attention, all eyes turning to Chelsea, waiting for her reaction. Chelsea smiled and shrugged it off that day, but it bothered her later. She sent Vanessa a long email, explaining passionately that it was her life and no one else's to judge. She wrote about how Mark, despite being younger, had shown her a level of love and care she had never experienced before. Vanessa replied with a single pointed question, "Aren't you curious why a handsome 32-year-old man is being so attentive to a 45-year-old woman with two kids?" Chelsea couldn't deny that the question stung a bit, but in her heart, she knew the truth of their relationship. It wasn't about age or convenience, it was about genuine connection and mutual respect, or so she thought. One night, Chelsea paced anxiously around their small, cozy living room, glancing at the clock every few minutes. It was way past midnight, and Mark still hadn't come home from work. This wasn't entirely unusual. Mark often worked late hours, losing track of time in his busy office job. But tonight felt different. A nagging worry twisted in her stomach. She tried calling his cell phone multiple times, each attempt greeted by the same frustrating message: "The number you have dialed is currently switched off." Chelsea's heart sank a little more each time she heard it. It was unlike Mark to switch off his phone, especially when he was working late. The house felt unusually silent, the ticking of the clock in the hallway echoing mockingly. Chelsea tried to distract herself by reading, watching TV, even cleaning, but nothing worked. Her mind was fixated on Mark's absence. Maybe it's a surprise, she muttered to herself, trying to stay positive. Maybe he's planning something special for me or the kids, but deep down, she knew it wasn't likely. Their birthdays and any other celebrations were months away. As dawn broke, Chelsea hadn't slept a wink. She sat at the kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee in her hands, lost in thought. Where could he be, she wondered aloud. What if something's happened to him? The possibilities swirled in her mind, each more worrying than the last. Reluctantly, she considered contacting the police, but she hesitated. Mark was a responsible adult, and she didn't want to overreact and cause unnecessary drama. I'll wait, she decided. Maybe he'll come home soon, and this will all be a silly misunderstanding. But as days turned into a week with no sign of Mark, Chelsea's worry transformed into fear. Every phone call made her heart leap, hoping it was Mark or at least someone with news about him, but each call ended in disappointment. Chelsea's heart was pounding in her chest, her mind racing with fear and confusion. The unexpected call had shattered the eerie silence of the morning, turning her deep worry into a tangible nightmare. She clutched the phone tightly, her voice shaking as she answered. "Hello," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The moment she heard Mark's voice, a mix of relief and dread washed over her. "Oh my God, Mark, are you all right? Where are you?" she cried out, tears streaming down her face. Before Mark could respond, the phone was abruptly taken from him. The cold, menacing voice that followed chilled her to the bone. Chelsea listened in horror as the stranger outlined the terrifying situation. Mark was being held for ransom because of a debt. The stern warning against involving the police only heightened her panic. As the call ended abruptly, Chelsea felt a wave of despair engulf her. She was sobbing uncontrollably, her mind a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. The thought of Mark being in danger at the hands of unscrupulous people was unbearable. She sat frozen, phone still in hand, tears blurring her vision. "What do I do now?" she whispered to herself. The threat against involving the police echoed in her mind. Chelsea's world had turned upside down in just a few hours. Her mind was in turmoil, torn between fear and hope. The weight of the decision to pay the ransom with her inheritance, a significant and sentimental sum, was overwhelming. But the thought of losing Mark, the love of her life, was far more devastating. Chelsea had inherited her father's house and his savings. She planned to use this money wisely in the future. Chelsea and Mark had grand ideas. With a heavy heart, she went to the bank, the reality of the situation sinking in with each step she took. She withdrew the ransom amount, a sum that represented years of her father's hard work and her future security. Following the kidnapper's instructions to the letter, Chelsea left the bag of money at the designated drop-off point. Then came the hardest part: waiting. Chelsea waited for what felt like an eternity, her heart leaping at every phone ring. Her mind was a whirlwind of scenarios, each more frightening than the last. She clung to her phone, willing it to ring, praying for any news of Mark. But as hours turned into a long, agonizing day, no call came. Had she been too late? Had something gone wrong? She was haunted by endless questions, each unanswered, leaving her feeling helpless and alone. "Could they have really fooled me so easily?" Chelsea whispered, her voice tinged with a mixture of bitterness and disbelief. She had just returned home after painstakingly delivering the ransom money, hoping it would bring her peace. But as she stepped inside, a chilling sense of wrongness gripped her. The rooms were a chaotic mess, looking like a scene straight out of a crime movie. Furniture overturned, cushions slashed, every nook and corner rampaged through. Her heart sank as she scanned the wreckage: valuables, money, jewelry, all gone. It wasn't just a robbery, it was a calculated, merciless plundering. The thief or thieves knew exactly where to look, suggesting a betrayal she couldn't fathom. What did I do to deserve this?" she murmured, her voice cracking as she knelt amidst her shattered belongings. It was more than a theft, it felt like a cruel, personal attack, stripping her not just of her possessions but of her security and hope. The realization that someone knew her home well enough to do this sent a shiver down her spine. She was left to grapple with her escalating fear and growing despair, feeling more isolated than ever. Standing in the ruins of her violated home, she felt utterly defeated. Fate seemed to mock her, testing her limits in the most harrowing ways. Max and Lily, who were just in kindergarten, would be surprised to find their house in a mess when they got home. Explaining to them that Mark, someone they had grown to love, might never return was a daunting thought for her. Even though a small part of her suspected Mark might be involved in the chaos, she struggled to believe it. How could Mark, someone she trusted, betray her like this, especially since she had been pregnant for the past 2 months? But if he really was part of it, a new feeling was creeping into her heart: anger. Tears filled her eyes as Chelsea began to clean up the mess, driven by worry. She frantically moved bags of stuff to the garage, trying to hide the chaos from Max and Lily when she brought them home. However, after only 30 minutes, the emotional burden overwhelmed her. She couldn't handle the strain and collapsed in tears on the porch, her hands too weak to continue. Chelsea was overwhelmed with tears, unable to stop crying. Amidst her sorrow, she suddenly heard an unexpected voice, the last one she wanted to hear at that moment. It was Grant, an 80-year-old man who lived alone across the street. His house was ancient and nearly uninhabitable. Chelsea and her children had always been wary of Grant. They found him odd, especially when he walked past them in his worn-out clothes, his intense gaze making Chelsea's children uneasy. "There's a fine line between love and hate," Grant spoke softly, his voice low and calm. As Chelsea sat there, Grant's presence initially confused her. She had always seen him as the strange, reclusive man who she suspected of spying on her. The only interaction her family ever had with Grant was an unfortunate incident involving a boomerang and his window. Chelsea's son Max had described Grant as a freak, recounting how Grant ominously predicted that Mark, Chelsea's husband, would have a fall. At the time, Chelsea didn't grasp the meaning behind Grant's words. She even suspected that he might have some mental issues, an idea reinforced by Mark. But as Grant sat beside her, sharing his thoughts, Chelsea began to see a different side of him. Grant, whom she had labeled as a peculiar old man, revealed layers she hadn't noticed before. As he continued to talk, Chelsea realized that there might be more to Grant than the odd, solitary figure she had always thought him to be. Grant spoke with a hint of wisdom: "You lose something, you gain something. When Monica, my wife, passed away 4 years ago, I felt my world crumble. I lost the will to live, wanting to follow her." Chelsea listened, her tears momentarily forgotten as Grant's story unfolded. He continued, "You probably don't remember, but the day you moved in, little Lily looked directly at me and smiled. She was only 2 and didn't know much, but that smile, it meant the world to me." As Grant reminisced, Chelsea's own memories of that day resurfaced. She vividly recalled the movers bustling around while 2-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Max played on the lawn. Lily had innocently smiled at Grant, who was watching from his window. This simple gesture had deeply touched Grant, leading him to step out onto his porch, his gaze fixed on Lily. Back then, Chelsea had misinterpreted the situation, seeing Grant's intense look towards her daughter. She had hastily judged him as strange and unsettling. But now, hearing Grant's perspective, she began to understand the profound impact that small moment had on him, offering a glimmer of light during his darkest times. This revelation brought a new depth to her perception of Grant, challenging her initial impressions of the solitary old man. Chelsea remembered telling Mark about Grant when they first moved in. Reflecting on it now, she realized Mark had played a significant role in shaping her and the children's perceptions of Grant. Mark had amplified the notion that Grant was unstable, a belief they all naively accepted. As Grant shared more, he revealed a poignant truth. "Truth, you won't believe it, Chelsea, but Lily's smile that day, it saved my life. She was just a tiny, adorable girl. I know we were strangers then, but there was a reason you moved into that house right across from mine." During their conversation, Chelsea learned that Grant had never had children. He had yearned for a large family and grandchildren, dreams that remained unfulfilled as his wife was unable to have children. Despite this, Grant's love for Monica was unwavering, and he dedicated his life to her. They spent 60 years together, childless, and when Monica passed away, Grant felt his purpose in life had vanished too. However, it was Lily's innocent smile on that fateful day that brought a ray of hope into his life. Her small act of kindness, unknowingly, prevented him from taking his own life. It had been 7 years since that moment, and every day since, Grant had looked out his window, hoping to catch a glimpse of Lily and her beautiful smile. This revelation profoundly affected Chelsea, reshaping her understanding of the man she had once misjudged. Grant, whom she had viewed as a peculiar old man, was simply a lonely soul who found solace in the small joys brought by her children. Grant clarified, "I'm not a maniac, Chelsea. I did try to connect with you, but Mark had already become a part of your life." And he hesitated. He then revealed something startling. Mark had threatened to harm him if he ever approached Chelsea and the children. "I always sensed something off about Mark right from the beginning," Grant confessed, "but I didn't want to cause you any distress. I could see how you felt about him." After sharing these insights, Grant got up and began moving bags to the garage in a quiet, unassuming manner. Then, with the same gentle demeanor, he started tidying up the house. Chelsea, recognizing his intention to help, silently accepted it. At that moment, she was grateful for the assistance. Before Chelsea left to pick up the kids from kindergarten, Grant offered, "I'll handle the rest of the cleaning, you go ahead." Chelsea, without a word, drove off, knowing it would take her about an hour and a half for the round trip. Upon her return, Chelsea was greeted by a clean and orderly house. She had expected Grant to still be there, but he was nowhere to be seen. His quiet act of kindness had transformed the space, leaving Chelsea to reflect on the misunderstood man who lived across the street. Chelsea crossed the street with a new sense of understanding and knocked on Grant's door the first time she had ever done so. "Why did you leave?" "I wanted you to meet the kids," she asked, her question punctuated by the enticing aroma of freshly baked treats emanating from inside. Grant, with his hands still covered in flour, appeared a bit surprised by her visit. "Oh, I didn't think the little ones would be too fond of me right now," he responded modestly. Chelsea knew he had a point. Mark's negative portrayal of Grant had deeply influenced Lily and Max. They were genuinely frightened of him, often trembling at the sight of the elderly man in his dilapidated house. Before Chelsea could respond, Grant returned with a plate of fresh cookies and candy. "This is for the kids. You don't have to tell them it's from me," he said with a gentle smile. Chelsea, at a loss for words, simply nodded and took the treats. That evening, after the children had fallen asleep, she found herself once again at Grant's doorstep. This time, she carried a gesture of goodwill and assortment of fruits from her fridge. Grant warmly welcomed Chelsea into his home, his eyes shining with an unspoken joy at having a guest after such a long time. The house, which had remained closed off to the world for years, was now opening its doors to a neighbor who had once viewed it with apprehension. As they settled into a comfortable silence, Chelsea broke the quiet, her voice tinged with regret. "I should have thanked you properly, Grant, and I'm here to apologize for how we've treated you." "I'm truly sorry." Before she could continue, Grant gently interrupted her. "It's not your fault, sweetie. Don't worry about it. I'm just happy you're here." Chelsea learned that it had been over 5 years since anyone had visited Grant's home. The neighborhood's misconceptions had painted him as an outcast, a misunderstood figure shrouded in unfounded rumors. As they conversed, Grant shared his past with Chelsea, revealing a life that was both fascinating and unexpected. He had been a cowboy working for a wealthy farmer since leaving high school. As Grant recounted his life story, Chelsea learned about his journey with Monica, his beloved wife. Monica had worked at a meatpacking plant when they met, and together they shared a life filled with happiness. Grant's life took a turn when advancements in technology phased out horses in the cattle industry, leading to his layoff. He briefly joined Monica at the meatpacking plant, but his heart ached for the open fields and the camaraderie of his cowboy days. Despite this setback, Monica was the family's pillar, working hard to support them both. When Monica retired, Grant set aside his nostalgia for his cowboy life, and they began to travel together. This period was the happiest of Grant's life, filled with adventures and shared experiences. Their inability to have children had only strengthened their bond, making them partners in every sense. However, Monica's passing marked the end of an era for Grant. Overwhelmed by grief, he turned to alcohol to cope with the loss. Yet, even in the depths of his alcoholism, his love and longing for Monica never waned. Eventually, he managed to quit drinking, but the void she left remained. As Chelsea listened, tears welled up in her eyes. She felt a pang of guilt for ever thinking Grant was stalking her. His story resonated with her, bringing a sense of warmth and familiarity, as if she were sitting beside a grandfather figure. Grant's life, marked by love and loss, was a testament to the fragile line between love and hate. That night, Chelsea returned home with a heart lighter than it had been in a long, long time. The revelations and stories shared by Grant had not only altered her perception of her neighbor, but also brought a sense of peace and understanding that she hadn't expected. Despite the challenges that lay ahead, such as waking up early to continue her search for employment, Chelsea felt a newfound tranquility. The burdens and misconceptions of the past seemed to have lifted, allowing her to appreciate the unexpected brightness that Grant had brought into her life. It was a reminder of how connections and understanding can transform our perspective and offer solace in the most unexpected ways. After a tumultuous week, Chelsea, a resilient mother, was on a mission to find a job. Her family's financial stability had been shaken. Before Mark's mysterious disappearance, they had managed with her savings and his modest income. But now, after spending most of their savings on ransom money, their financial situation was dire. Despite the challenges, Chelsea remained hopeful and set out to seek employment, recognizing the need for official intervention, especially considering the threats and concerns surrounding Mark's behavior. Chelsea had taken the responsible step of contacting the police. The authorities had assured her that they would conduct an investigation into the matter. This move was crucial for ensuring the safety and well-being of her family and addressing the potential risks posed by Mark. She applied to various places looking for a job but faced unexpected hurdles. During interviews, she openly shared that she was a single mother raising her children alone and was also expecting another child. This honesty, however, led to polite rejections from many employers. In one particularly disheartening interview, the interviewer bluntly told her, "I'm sorry, but we see your pregnancy as a sign of instability. You'll probably need maternity leave soon, and we can't accommodate that." The same story unfolded in most places she applied to. They admired her qualifications and experience, but her personal circumstances became a stumbling block. Chelsea finally started working as a waitress at a nearby restaurant, a significant change from her previous life of staying at home to care for her children. This shift came about after Mark had persuaded her to leave her earlier job to focus on the family. Adjusting to her new routine was challenging. Each day, she juggled her work responsibilities with the demands of picking up her children from kindergarten and managing household tasks. Meanwhile, her belly was growing more noticeable with each passing day. She attempted to conceal her pregnancy at work, anxious about drawing attention or concern from others. Driven by the need to provide for her family, Chelsea persevered in her job despite the physical and emotional strain. Grant observed her daily struggles. One morning, he approached her with a look of concern. "Chelsea, sweetie, you're pushing yourself too hard. You really should take a break, especially now," he suggested, referring to her pregnancy. Chelsea, already feeling overwhelmed and on the edge of a breakdown, found Grant's unexpected visit and advice frustrating. She valued her independence and was determined to handle her challenges on her own terms. Grant, however, persisted, offering well-intentioned but unsolicited advice on taking care and resting. This situation added to Chelsea's growing stress as she grappled with the complexities of balancing work, family, and her own well-being. Eventually, the pressure Chelsea faced became too much for her to bear. Exhausted and emotionally drained from her pregnancy, her demanding job, and the constant balancing act with her children, she finally snapped. "Why do you keep interfering in my life, old man? I don't need your endless, irrelevant stories and advice," Chelsea exclaimed, her patience worn thin. Her outburst was a clear sign of the immense stress she was under. Continuing in her heightened emotional state, she challenged Grant's understanding of her situation. "How am I supposed to feed my children if I don't work? And what do you know about raising kids anyway? You've never had any of your own," she said, her voice crackling with a mix of anger and desperation. As she stood there, breathing heavily, her face showed the depth of her emotional turmoil. Grant was visibly hurt by her words, struck deeply in his most sensitive spots. However, he tried to mask his pain with a smile, conceding that perhaps he wasn't in a position to offer parental advice. "You're right. Who am I to advise you on these matters?" he said softly. There wasn't much else Grant could say in response. He stood there, forcing a smile, but his eyes betrayed his true feelings. Tears began to well up, reflecting his inner sorrow. To hide his vulnerability, Grant quickly turned away, intending to leave discreetly without revealing his emotional state. After Grant left, Chelsea collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed by her emotions. Tears streamed down her face as she grappled with the harsh reality of her situation. Deep down, she knew Grant had a point. Her job, especially in her advanced stage of pregnancy, was putting both her health and her unborn child's well-being at risk. Yet the fear of not being able to provide for her other children haunted her, leaving her torn between her job and her family's needs. That morning marked a change for Chelsea. For the first time, she chose not to go to work. She didn't even take her children to kindergarten. She needed this time to pause and reflect on her next steps. Meanwhile, Grant, instead of returning home, wandered towards the town, lost in his own thoughts. The following morning brought an unexpected surprise for Chelsea. Attempting to leave her house, she found her door blocked by a large plastic bag filled with groceries on her doorstep. Confused, she pushed the door open and brought the bag inside. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. Assuming it was a delivery mistake, Chelsea decided to keep the bag in her kitchen temporarily, expecting someone to claim it. However, no one came for it, even by late evening. Not wanting the food to go to waste, she reluctantly stored the groceries in her fridge, still puzzled over their mysterious arrival. The pattern of mysterious deliveries continued the next day, further perplexing Chelsea. This time, the doorstep surprise was a bag full of toys. Max and Lily were overjoyed at the sight of the toys and eagerly tried to grab them. Chelsea, however, remained cautious, unsure if these were yet another case of mistaken delivery. She allowed the children to play with the toys without opening the boxes, worried about what she would do if the rightful owners came looking for them. The following morning brought even more excitement. Max, waking up early, discovered not one but two bags at the door, filled with both fruits and more toys. Max's shouts of excitement woke up Lily, and this time Chelsea let the children open the toys. The kids were thrilled with their newfound treats, immersing themselves in the joy of new toys and books. After several days of these mysterious deliveries, Chelsea's curiosity and determination to uncover the truth grew. She decided to take action. One early morning, she woke up before dawn and positioned herself in front of her window, keeping a vigilant watch to see who was leaving these generous gifts at her doorstep. As Chelsea watched from her window, she was heartbroken to see that it was Grant who had been leaving the gifts. Knowing his limited financial means, she was both touched and concerned, wondering how he could afford such generosity. The thought that he might be resorting to stealing to provide these gifts troubled her deeply. Determined to learn the truth, Chelsea discreetly followed Grant. Her heart ached as she discovered him working as a gardener at Hank's house, a job that seemed physically demanding, especially for someone of Grant's age. Overcome with emotion, she retreated to her car and drove home, tears streaming down her face. That evening, she returned and observed Grant receiving payment from Hank. She continued to follow him discreetly as he went to a store and emerged with bags full of items. Sitting in her car, Chelsea was overwhelmed with regret for her harsh words to Grant previously. It turned out that on the day Chelsea had confronted him, Grant, deeply moved by her plight, had set out to find a job for the first time in many years. His search was met with rejection, as no one seemed eager to hire an elderly man with no modern professional skills. Undeterred, Grant resorted to standing in front of an office building with a sign pleading for help and a job. His earnest appeal touched the hearts of passers-by, who began leaving money at his feet. That day, Grant collected a significant amount, which he joyfully spent on groceries and toys for Chelsea's family. Grant's commitment to earning his keep was clear. After leaving the bag of groceries at Chelsea's doorstep, he returned to his spot the next day with a new message on his sign: "Please don't give me money. Give me a job." His pride and desire for self-sufficiency were evident. He was grateful for the help he had received but was determined to work for his income. That day, a man in a business suit, intrigued by Grant's sign, stopped to talk to him. He asked Grant if he could do gardening, explaining that his regular gardener had left unexpectedly. Grant's face lit up with hope and eagerness as he agreed to the work. Before accepting the job, Grant made a simple request. He asked to be paid daily, a condition that the man, who introduced himself as Hank, readily agreed to. Hank then drove Grant to his home on the outskirts of town, a beautiful property that required maintenance. Grant was shown the tool shed and the areas that needed tending. He wasted no time and immediately set to work, determined to prove his worth. His hard work and dedication paid off. At the end of the day, Hank was so impressed with Grant's effort that he handed him two $100 bills, explaining that he would pay Grant $100 a day, with the extra $100 as a bonus for his excellent work. "Thank you," Hank Grant expressed his gratitude, deeply touched by Hank's generosity and the opportunity to work. As he left Hank's house at the end of the day, Grant felt a renewed sense of purpose and dignity. Grant's daily routine became a testament to his determination and kind-heartedness. Each day, he dedicated himself to his work in Hank's garden, putting in effort and care to ensure everything was tended to perfection. With the money he earned, he made thoughtful purchases, groceries to nourish Chelsea's family and toys to bring joy to her children. Every evening, he quietly left these tokens of his kindness at Chelsea's doorstep, asking for nothing in return. Chelsea was deeply moved by Grant's unwavering dedication. She felt a mix of gratitude and embarrassment for the kindness he had shown, and she knew she needed to express her thanks while also gently asking him to stop. Gathering her children, Max and Lily, Chelsea decided it was time to have an important conversation with them. She sat them down and began to explain the situation in a way they could understand. "Max, Lily, you know all these amazing books and toys you've been enjoying lately," Chelsea started, watching their faces light up with joy. "Well, I have something special to tell you about them. They were actually given to us by Grant, the old man who lives nearby." The children's expressions shifted from excitement to surprise. Max and Lily had always been wary of Grant, viewing him as just a strange old neighbor. The revelation that he was the one providing their new treasures was astonishing to them. "Really, Mommy? Grant gave us these?" Max asked, his eyes wide with wonder. Yes, he did," Chelsea replied softly, smiling at their innocent reactions. "He's been working very hard every day to buy these gifts for you. He's a very kind man, and he's been helping us a lot." As Chelsea was having this heartfelt conversation with Max and Lily, her phone rang, breaking the moment. She glanced at the caller ID and felt a jolt of surprise. It was the police. Her heart started pounding as she remembered the report she had filed about Mark. "Hello, Chelsea speaking," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Hi, Chelsea. This is Officer Johnson from the local police department. We might have some news regarding the person you reported." Mark, the officer's voice was calm and professional. Chelsea's eyes widened, and she quickly moved away from her children, seeking some privacy. "Yes, I remember. What's the news?" "We found someone who matches the description you gave us. We need you to come down to the station to confirm if it's him," the officer explained. Chelsea's mind raced. The possibility that he might have been found brought a mix of relief and apprehension. "Okay, I'll be there as soon as I can." "Thank you," Officer Chelsea replied, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. As she ended the call, her eldest child, Lily, looked up at her with wide, inquisitive eyes. "Mom, is everything okay? Who was that?" Chelsea knelt down, gently ruffling Lily's hair. "That was the police, sweetheart. They might have found someone I've been very worried about." "Is it about Uncle Mark?" Lily asked, her young face filled with concern. Chelsea nodded, trying to mask her own worry with a reassuring smile. "Yes, darling. Remember how I told you he was in some trouble and I helped him? Well, I'm going to the police station now to see if they've really found him." Chelsea arrived at the police station with a heart full of hope, but as she stepped inside, she was greeted with a reality that shattered her expectations. Officer Johnson led her to a small, stark interview room where she sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Chelsea, thank you for coming in," Officer Johnson began, his tone somber. "We've made a significant discovery about Mark, or rather, the person you know as Mark." Chelsea's brow furrowed in confusion. "What do you mean?" "The man's real name is Miles Moore. He's not who he claimed to be," the officer revealed, his eyes meeting Chelsea's. Her heart sank. "Miles Moore," she echoed, the name sounding foreign and cold. "Yes, he's a professional con artist with a long history of deceiving people, particularly single mothers who are financially stable or stand to inherit money," Officer Johnson continued, his words like a hammer to Chelsea's hope. The room seemed to spin as Chelsea absorbed this information. But how did he know about my inheritance? Miles Moore is skilled in gathering information. He knew about your inheritance from your father and planned his approach accordingly. Everything he did was calculated and executed with precision, the officer explained, his expression a mix of sympathy and professionalism. Chelsea's mind raced back to all the moments she had shared with Mark, the trust she had placed in him, and the ransom money she had given, thinking she was helping him out of trouble. It was all a lie, a meticulously crafted deception. I can't believe this. I trusted him, Chelsea whispered, her voice breaking. Officer Johnson nodded understandingly. It's not your fault, Chelsea. People like Moore are experts in manipulation. He's conned many families, and you were, unfortunately, one of his targets. Chelsea felt a mixture of anger, betrayal, and deep sadness. She had been so convinced that she was helping someone she cared about, only to discover it was all an elaborate scam. What will happen now? She asked, trying to hold back tears. We're building a case against him. Your testimony will be crucial. We're also in contact with other victims to strengthen our case, the officer replied. Chelsea nodded slowly, her mind still reeling from the revelation. Reflecting on the ordeal, Chelsea remembered Grant, and at the time she had brushed off Grant's concerns, attributing them to his weird nature. But now, in the wake of the devastating truth about Miles Moore, Chelsea's respect for Grant's intuition deepened significantly. With the revelation still sinking in, Chelsea turned her thoughts to the ransom money she had paid, hoping to rescue Mark from his supposed troubles. She inquired about it to Officer Johnson, her voice laced with a mix of hope and uncertainty. The money, the ransom I paid, is there any chance of getting it back? Chelsea asked tentatively. Officer Johnson nodded, a hint of optimism in his tone. Actually, we may have some good news on that front. During our investigation, we located a bag full of money in the place where Miles was staying. It's very likely that it includes the money you paid. We're still in the process of verifying the details. Chelsea's eyes brightened slightly at this news. The possibility of recovering her money, a tangible piece of her father's legacy, gave her a small sense of relief amidst the turmoil. That's a relief to hear, she said, allowing herself a moment of hope. Please keep me updated on that. We will, Chelsea, Officer Johnson reassured her. Chelsea made her way back home, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Now, armed with the truth and a newfound clarity, her feelings had shifted to a blend of resolution and gratitude, especially towards Grant. She walked with a purposeful stride to Grant's house. The elderly neighbor who had seen through Mark's facade from the very beginning, Chelsea appreciated his insight more than ever now. As she approached his door, she took a deep breath, steadying her emotions. She knocked on the door, and after a few moments, Grant appeared. He looked a bit surprised to see her, his face etched with concern and curiosity. Without a word, Chelsea stepped forward and embraced him in a heartfelt hug. It was her way of showing gratitude, an unspoken acknowledgement of his wisdom and her regret for not listening to him sooner. Grant, taken aback at first, gently returned the hug, understanding the gesture's depth. After a brief moment, Chelsea stepped back, her eyes meeting Grant's. Thank you, she said simply, yet the words carried a weight of sincerity and appreciation. Grant nodded, a gentle smile on his face, conveying his understanding and support without needing to say anything. That evening, as Chelsea settled into the comfort of her home, still processing the day's events, her phone rang. Seeing Officer Johnson's name on the caller ID, she answered quickly, a mix of anticipation and hope in her voice. Hello, Officer Johnson. Good evening, Chelsea. I have some good news for you, came the officer's voice, sounding upbeat. Chelsea's heart skipped a beat. Yes. We've completed our initial examination of the duffel bag we found at Miles Moore's residence. The description you provided matched perfectly, and more importantly, the amount of money inside is consistent with what you reported as the ransom you paid, Officer Johnson informed her. A wave of relief and joy washed over Chelsea. That's incredible news. I can't believe it. We're still finalizing a few details, but it looks very likely that we'll be able to return this money to you soon, the officer continued. Chelsea felt a smile spread across her face. a feeling of elation bubbling up inside her. The return of the money meant more than just financial relief. It was a symbol of justice, a tangible piece of good emerging from a situation fraught with deceit. Chelsea found herself turning back to the plans she had before her life was disrupted. Her inheritance, once a source of vulnerability, was now again a symbol of potential and opportunity. She was determined to invest this money in a way that would honor her father's memory and reflect the values he had instilled in her. Chelsea spent evenings poring over various investment options, seeking something that resonated with her and would make a meaningful impact. She considered a range of possibilities, from starting a small business to investing in community projects or even funding educational scholarships. During her research, Chelsea discovered a company offering business advice. She scheduled a meeting, and to her surprise, the consultant was Hank, her neighbor Grant's employer. "Small world, isn't it?" Chelsea chuckled as she entered Hank's office. "Grant lives just across from me. I'm here to find smart ways to invest my savings." As they explored various investment options, their conversation naturally drifted to Grant. "He's more than just my gardener," Hank shared warmly. "He does so much around the house to me. He's like the grandfather I never had." Hank revealed how Grant often mentioned a family he was supporting. Moved by Grant's kindness, Hank had always been extra generous with him. Chelsea's eyes widened. "That family is mine," she said. Hearing this, Hank's admiration for Grant grew even more. After much discussion, Chelsea and Hank decided on a plan. They would invest most of her money in stable, reliable stocks. Hank also suggested putting a smaller portion into stocks of up-and-coming companies. "It's a bit of a gamble," he admitted, "but the potential rewards are huge." Just as they were wrapping up, Chelsea leaned forward with a spark in her eye. "I have one more idea I'd like to run by you, Hank." It was a serene Sunday morning, and Grant was preparing for his usual workday at Hank's house. However, upon his arrival, Hank greeted him with an unexpected change of plans. "Grant, take a break today," Hank announced, placing a reassuring hand on Grant's shoulder. Puzzled, Grant furrowed his brows. "But I've got a ton of work in the backyard." "What do you mean?" he asked, clearly surprised. Hank chuckled lightly. "No work here today. We're heading somewhere special. Make sure your tools are ready, you'll be busy," he said with a hint of excitement, motioning towards his pickup truck. Despite his confusion, Grant climbed into the truck, curiosity piqued. After an hour's drive through scenic countryside, Hank's truck approached a charming farmhouse. He stopped to open the gates, then drove through and parked in the yard. Both men stepped out, stretching their limbs in the fresh air. Moments later, the farmhouse door swung open, revealing Chelsea with a bright, welcoming grin. She approached Grant, wiping her hands on her apron, and enveloped him in a warm hug. "Welcome to the farm, Grant," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with joy. Grant stood there, utterly bewildered. He couldn't fathom how Hank and Chelsea knew each other or why he was at this farmhouse. Suddenly, Max and Lily burst out of the barn, their excited screams filling the air as they jumped around. But as they approached Grant, their excitement transformed into a respectful quietness. "Thank you, Mr. Grant," they said in their innocent, childlike way. "Do you want to come and see the horses with us?" At the mention of horses, Grant's eyes sparkled with a joy long forgotten. He nodded slowly and followed the children, his heart beating with anticipation. Later that evening, they all gathered around a beautifully set table where Chelsea had prepared a mouth-watering turkey. Amidst the laughter and storytelling, Chelsea cleared her throat for an announcement. "Grant, I've reclaimed my inheritance," she began, sharing a warm glance with Hank. "And with Hank's help, I've bought this farm for you." Grant's eyes widened in disbelief. It was then revealed that when Chelsea and Hank were finalizing their investment plans, Chelsea had inquired about buying a farm with horses. Hank found the request unusual, but Chelsea explained it was for Grant. "I remembered your dream," Grant, Chelsea said, her voice soft yet firm. "You always wanted to be around horses again, to live on a farm. I never forgot that." Chelsea's words resonated deeply with Grant, a mix of gratitude and amazement washing over him as he realized how his humble dream was becoming a beautiful reality. Grant now lived on the farm and took care of horses in the stable. A lot of people from the city came to ride horses, and it soon became a good source of income for everyone. Max and Lily truly fell in love with Grant. They called him Grandpa Grant. They were all like a big family. Chelsea finally gave birth to a little baby girl, Sophia. Grant was like a little kid. He was the most excited of them all. He was all over the baby. Hank and Chelsea often met to discuss their mutual business, and through those meetings, they gradually became closer. Grant settled into his new life on the farm with a sense of contentment he hadn't felt in years. He devoted himself to the care of the horses in the stable, his days filled with the peaceful routines of farm life. The stable quickly gained popularity among city dwellers seeking a taste of the countryside. They came to ride the horses, turning the farm into a thriving source of income for everyone involved. Max and Lily grew especially fond of Grant. They affectionately began calling him Grandpa Grant, a title he cherished deeply. Their bond flourished, and together they formed a close-knit family-like unit. The joy in the household multiplied when Chelsea gave birth to a baby girl named Sophia. Grant's excitement knew no bounds. He doted on the little one, his enthusiasm reminiscent of a child's pure delight. Sophia's arrival brought a new dimension of happiness to the farm. Meanwhile, Hank and Chelsea continued to meet regularly to discuss their business ventures. Through these meetings, their relationship evolved and deepened. They found themselves sharing not just business strategies but personal stories and aspirations, gradually growing closer in a bond strengthened by mutual respect and shared experiences. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the farm, they all sat together, basking in the simple joy of being with each other. It was a moment of pure contentment, a testament to the unexpected turns of life that can lead to the most beautiful of destinations. And there, amidst the rolling hills and the gentle whinnying of horses, they found their happy ending.